If you didn't like this book, it's because you don't have media literacy. No one can read anymore. No one has media literacy. Or cooked. No one can read blah, blah, blah. If you have spent any amount of time online in bookish spaces, then I am sure that you have seen all of the discourse around media literacy, people's lack of it, and the overall downward trend of literacy rates among adults. And while I don't disagree with all of the talking points online, however, I see a lot of doom and nihilism, and I do see a lot of turning the term media literacy into just another buzzword to incite strong emotions in people, to be inflammatory online and generate a lot of buzz and engagement. But what I think would be more helpful are some tips on how to read better, no matter where you are in your writing journey, because it is something that you can always improve upon, even if you are a lifelong reader and you've never ever had a reading slump in your life. I don't know who that is, but if you are out there, no one is the master of all readers. It is a skill. So here are all my tips on how to improve your reading if that is something you're interested in. Hi, hello, how are you? I hope you're having a wonderful day. If you're new here, welcome. My name is maddibluhme and I'm a multi-genre author. And if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. It means the world to me. Improving your reading comprehension and media literacy, they are different. Reading comprehension is more about understanding the words directly on the paper, while media literacy is more about being able to read between the lines, understand the context in which a piece was written, the time period, historical events that might have been happening, influences on the author, and gleaning those themes that the author is trying to tell you throughout the work. However, I think that these tips will help you build both of those skills in tandem with one another. And this video is geared toward people who are reading and looking to really intentionally improve their reading skills. If you are someone who hasn't read in a long time and you want to just start reading and build that habit, then the best advice is to just read whatever strikes your fancy, start there, rebuild that habit, fall in love with reading, and then you can come back and take those steps to improve those reading skills. And of course, this is a non-exhaustive list. These are just some tips that I have really used myself and learned what helps me improve my reading. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you build your reading habit, maintaining that habit, maintaining those skills, or improving them in the comments below. And with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. My first tip is just a mindset shift. And this can be applied to any area of your life. It has really helped me a lot. And that is looking at challenge as something that is positive and something that can be a part of leisure. A lot of the times online, a common phrase I see that is often used as a thought-stopping argument to kind of shirk any deeper look or criticism is it's not that deep, or I do X, Y, and Z, so I don't want to think when I read. And of course, there are many variations of that, and I will never be one to say that you only have to read to get better at reading. That is just impossible. I enjoy a good lighthearted read as well, something that isn't as pressing, but variety is the spice of life. So it's all part of the ecosystem of reading, right? But I find this sentiment is most often applied to reading where the idea of challenging yourself is almost looked upon as performative or elitist, or just like in that you have to be an intellectual to want to get better at reading, which is interesting because I think that we have this understanding of challenge as leisure for any other hobby that exists. The coloring hobby has exploded, at least online, and that is something that people start at a base level, and then you see them improve in adding shadows or completely changing up the coloring page to suit their vision and finding new ways to work with the alcohol markers or whatever paint pens, like whatever sort of medium they're using to color. There's this idea of improvement as something that is admirable. Same thing with crocheting or knitting. It is something that you go into with the expectation of learning. So I think applying that to reading, and again, just looking at this as a leisure activity and challenges leisure as leisure will really help make all of the rest of it easier. And that is something I tell myself all the time, every day. I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And that is just constantly going through my head. And it really does help. Unfortunately, saying things helps you believe them. But anyway, that's just my first tip. A good mindset shift. My next two tips are things you can apply to the books you are currently reading. And so the first one is, if you see a word that you don't recognize, give yourself a minute and just try to guess what it means based on the context of the page before you look it up, and do look it up. There are a lot of articles you can find about how our language, our vernacular is shrinking. We're using less words to communicate. And there are so many amazing words in the English language, or any language. Unfortunately, English is the only one I know fluently, but there are so many amazing words to use. Reading is a great way to grow your vocabulary, and that helps with your understanding of the text as a whole. And my second tip is to indulge your curiosity. If there's a historical event that you didn't know about and it is mentioned in the book, Google it and learn about it. Or if there are clothes that are mentioned but you have no idea what they look like, Google it, look it up. I did that a lot with The Count of Monte Cristo. That is both very heavily and closely tied to historical events of that time. And also, clothes mentioned. I don't live in France during the 1800s, so I had to look up what everything looked like. And it all added a depth to my understanding and enjoyment of the story. And then my next three tips are for new books to add. As I said, variety is the spice of life. So tip number one, read the classics. And before you're like, Maddie, the Western canon is very heavily skewed towards white men. It's not very diverse. A lot of the books have problematic elements. I know, and that's why I will never ever tell anyone to only read the classics. But before you click off, stay with me here. The classics can be a really good resource to intentionally grow your reading skills, because most of them are out of copyright. They're incredibly accessible, so you can get them for free. And because they are used to teach reading in school and college and whatnot, there are so many accessible resources that will teach you how to engage with the text and interpret it and really work on those skills in a more structured manner. So I think it's very helpful to occasionally read a classic. That is another great way to grow your vocabulary. You can see how the English language, again, that's the only language I can read books in. So you can see how if you read in other languages, how language has changed even from just 100 years ago to now. And when you kind of get a voice for the classics, you realize just how messy and hedonistic people have always been, even if they tried to hide it behind, not being explicit or graphic in their stories. People have just always been people. Tip number two, read diversely, and I mean this in every sense of the word. Diverse authors, diverse genres, diverse main characters, diverse plots, nonfiction and fiction. The more you can incorporate into your reading diet, and if you have a preference for one genre or one type of thing, like that's fine, but just every few books, intentionally bring in something else that is so out of your wheelhouse, or trying something new that definitely forces you to think outside of yourself a little bit more than if you always stay in your comfort zone. And that is such an excellent way to grow media literacy and also become more empathetic and understanding of other people. I also think it's important to not only read books with happy endings. As a kid, I read so many books with bittersweet endings, and I think that was really incredibly helpful for my development and learning to deal with disappointment or when things don't go your way. So any way that you can diversify your reading is only going to be positive. So this is probably like my most, if you take any one of these tips, it would be that one. And my last tip for bringing in new books is to read philosophy. Philosophy, I feel, has gotten such a bad rap in our culture, society, in every single movie or whatever. Philosophy is seen as a joke. Like, I love Monsters University, but that one philosophy major definitely played as a joke. And is it funny? Yes. And also, if I was in charge of education, I would make philosophy a core subject because at its core, it is analyzing how we think, why we think, and how to think. When I started reading philosophy and getting into it, I just realized how little I knew about my own way of thinking, and being able to analyze and redirect those paths of thought have really helped in pretty much every other aspect of my life, right? Because those critical thinking skills and those soft skills bleed into everything. So I think that it is helpful overall, but especially for reading, and especially when you are reading diversely, it helps you to really put yourself in another perspective and follow their train of thought, whoever you are reading about, and discerning, reading between the lines, and all of that stuff. So that has been really helpful for me. And it is really interesting because it is so varied, and a good philosophy is rooted in reason. So you can have two conflicting philosophers or schools of thought, but they both make sense. My final tip is an activity, I guess you could say, behavior change, and that is to join a book club, whether in person or online, something casual, something more structured. That is such a great way to discuss your thoughts and really put to words if you like something or not and why, and hear other people's perspectives, because we all have a different relationship with the books we read based off of our lived experience, our understanding of the world. So we can read the same book, but we'll take completely different things away from it. So having that chance to discuss one work from however many different perspectives is really excellent for those media literacy and reading comprehension skills. And maybe sometimes you'll change your mind, or maybe sometimes you'll just double down on what you thought. But those are all of my tips for improving your reading skills. I hope that at least one of them resonates and really helps in your journey. As I said before, I would love to know what helps you. I'm always looking to improve my reading skills as well, because again, it is a skill. It's something that we can always improve upon no matter where we are in our journeys. If you liked this video, I would so appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you would like to join along my writing journey and get these little yap sessions every now and again, then you can subscribe to my channel. And that is all I have. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.